On today's Motor Week, Ginny Buckley picks her favourite from the whole range of new cars on offer from Volkswagen. Richard Hammond drives the newly updated and improved family friend, the Renault Espace. And Glenda McKay gets to grips with a sporty little Italian number, the Fiat Punto HGT.
Volkswagen may have been very busy transforming Skoda and Seat into top quality marques, but that doesn't mean that they've neglected the VW badge. You might think that they haven't had anything new out for quite a while, but you'd be wrong, because just take a look at this lot. Over the past 6 months, 11 new models have found their way into the bulging Volkswagen range. Everything from the power-packed V6 4Motion Golf and Bora to the Polo Saloon and Estates that feature brand new interiors. The only problem I've got is which to drive first, and I've never been good at decisions. Well, the Lupo might be the baby of Volkswagen's range, but they've managed to squeeze in a 1.4 litre 16-valve unit that produces 100 brake horsepower. And until the arrival of the Lupo GTI, which is coming soon, this is the fastest version, and it does feel very nippy. The top speed is 116 miles an hour, and 0 to 60 will take you a respectable 10 seconds. The Lupo is a great little car, and this new engine just makes it even more fun to drive. At £10,895 on the road, the package includes 16 valve badges, alloys, front fog lights and a very sporty centrally mounted stainless steel exhaust, unique on any production Volkswagen at the moment. As the name suggests, everything is colour-coded and you can even get colour-coded leather upholstery. Next up, a new 1.6 Beetle. At £12,995 on the road, this is the most affordable Beetle yet. Now, Beatlemania might be settling down, but this new entry-level model makes it a more affordable proposition for people who want to drive something a bit different, but who don't want to spend a fortune. The 1.6 engine means a drop of 13 brake horsepower. The top speed is now 111 miles per hour, and 0 to 60 takes around 11.5 seconds. Included in the package are anti-lock brakes, driver and front passenger airbags, and VW's electronic stability program, which senses any slide and reacts by automatically applying the brakes to as many wheels as necessary, which of course makes driving safer because you're far less likely to skid. And as well as all that, you get electric windows, electric heated door mirrors, remote central locking and of course a bud vase. Everything else is just like the 2-litre Beetle. Basically in here it feels like you're in a Golf, and let's face it, that's what it is. It's a very easy car to drive. Get in and you're away. Having said that, you do miss the extra power of the 2-litre, particularly when you're pulling away or when you're overtaking. But really, there's enough power here for most people to live with, and it certainly won't be a problem for the money that you'll save. The other things that irritate me about this car on the road is the pillar here. It really does get in the way of your vision, and also the fact that other Beetle owners expect you to wave at them when you pass them on the road. Yes, hello. Yes, lovely to see you. But while the Beetle is okay for the novelty value, this is the kind of car I'd rather wake up to day after day. The Golf V5 170 brake horsepower. Volkswagen have revised the existing 5-cylinder 10-valve unit so that each cylinder now has 4 valves. And this multi-valve technology means that the engine revs more smoothly and more freely, giving you a lot more power at the top end. And you can really feel the benefits to it. The engine is absolutely superb. Whichever gear you're in now, this thing just pulls. It is amazing. And the added benefit as well is that it's a more economic unit than the old 150 brake horsepower one. So it's a bonus all round, really. This is definitely the kind of motoring I like. Smooth performance, plenty of power and great handling. You don't have to work too hard behind the wheel, but somehow you still manage to feel involved in the drive. Now, I know that Volkswagen's V5 may not be raw or exciting enough for everyone, but I like the fact that it's smooth and refined, so it suits me. It's a grown-up car, but then it comes at a grown-up price. The 3-door version will set you back £18,500 and this 5-door, £19,000. But then, I've always been a high-maintenance girl.
Now here's something you might find useful next time you find yourself chatting to a bunch of really seriously posh people. Try it. First of all, what's this? It's an ear. Secondly, what's the opposite of far? Well, near. Now put them together and you've got near. I'd never take a bus, I'd only ever go by taxi. Alternatively, you might want to try just turning up in the right vehicle. Something perhaps a little bit like this. Because the humble people carrier has come an awful long way since the original vans with doors and seats. In fact, it's really not so humble anymore. For a start, most of the manufacturers now make and sell an MPV, and Renault, one of the original, if not the very first to bring us a people carrier, have now upped the stakes even further with the arrival of this. It's the Grand Espace Initiale, a kind of long wheelbase super luxury version of their original Espace. At first glance, I can't make my mind up whether this thing is aimed at the very posh family, or maybe the businessman who needs to carry a lot of businessmen and women around with him or her. I don't know, but certainly luxury is the name of the game. We've got leather and Alcantara on all the seats, and it's not like just the 4 seats in your family saloon either, because in here, there's hundreds of them, 7 in fact, stretching away to the horizon. That horizon, of course, is that bit further back anyway, because this is the grand version of the Espace, which means you've got room for 7 seats, and then there's a boot beyond that. It's that bit longer. And then we've got kit, loads of it, but at first glance, you can't see it, because they've got this weird minimalist dash carried over from the ordinary Espace, now clad in nice suede effect Alcantara. Bits and pieces like the radio are dismantled and hidden, distributed around the dash, so it can't be stolen in one lump. We've now got digital controls for the air conditioning, one for me and one for my fellow passenger up at the front here. With luxury being given top priority, you're not going to settle for just any old engine, so we get something a little bit special. It is their 3-litre 24-valve V6 with 194 brake horsepower, which means it's actually, considering its size, pretty rapid. Well, it is kind of an interesting vehicle just because it's so unusual, but really this is one of those cases where if this is what you need, then this is what you've got to have. And if you require a huge 7-seater luxurious vehicle, then this is the only choice for you. If you don't, well, I guess you wouldn't. Is there any sense in that?
In 1997, when Mercedes were about to launch their latest model, all the signs were good. Experts predicted it would be a future car of the year. Early test drives were positive, and it was to be the first truly mass-produced Mercedes-Benz. But then, it all went wrong. A team of Swedish testers took the A-Class to a circuit and put it through what they call the Elk test, a high-speed slalom. The A-Class tipped over, and production of the car was halted. Now, it took months before the A-Class was relaunched with modifications that kept the car stable, but some damage had been done. Well, the A-Class has been around for some time now, so we thought it was worth a look as a used car buy. Supplies initially took a while to come through, but there are plenty of examples out there on the market, either from main dealers, car superstores, or in the private sales. Mercedes have sold well over 20,000 A-classes in this country, and they're a familiar sight on our roads. There's no doubting the brilliant packaging on the A-Class. It has the space of a Golf or a Focus, but it's smaller than a Ford car. The boot's not huge, there's good room in the rear for passengers, and the seats remove fairly easily. There are also front and side airbags, but all-round build quality is perhaps not what you'd expect on a Mercedes-Benz. I've always really liked the A-Class, and if you're thinking of buying a used one, remember there are lots about, so haggle hard to get a good deal. Too expensive, walk away and go to another dealer. Always look for a car that's got full service history, or you could look out for one of the former fleet or hire cars which might have about 25,000 miles on the clock, but could be snapped up for as little as £8,500. The A-Class is quiet, easy to drive and handles well for what is a tall car. Now, if you're fed up with city driving and don't want a full automatic model, well, you could look out for Mercedes' auto clutch system, which uses a conventional 5-speed gearbox but without the clutch, and it's a system that actually works quite well. Now, when the A-Class was first launched, it had few rivals. Now, it's got lots. There's the Scenic, the Picasso, the Zafira, and Audi's A2. If a badge like this is important to you, then the A-Class is a good buy, albeit a rather expensive one. That's this week's used car tip, the Mercedes-Benz A-Class.
Join us after the break when Glenda McKay checks out the looks and sporting credentials of Fiat's Punto HGT.
Now, I'm the girl, so I get to drive the shopping car, the Fiat Punto. It's a fine car, it's stylish, it's trendy, but it wouldn't look out of place on a school run. Well, that's what you might think, but let me tell you, the Spirito de Punto runs strong in this car, my child. Most Fiat Puntos come with an adequate 1.2 litre engine. It's a workhorse and there's nothing wrong with that. The styling is spacious and trendy. In fact, the Fiat Punto has been outselling the Ford Fiesta in Europe for years. Trendy TV ads and funky styling are all very well, and it's okay in the town, but on the open roads, this car, it doesn't quite talk the talk. This model's got a 1.8 16-valve engine, and it feels pretty nippy round town, but get it on the open roads, and you've really got to boot the accelerator to get it going. We've got 130 brake horsepower, we've got 0 to 60 in 8.6 seconds, and the top speed is 127 miles an hour, all for under and way under 14 grand. I reckon that's pretty good. There's some lovely touches in the interior. We like the design. I love the steering wheel. It feels really chunky, and the gear stick as well. But we've still got some of that, you know, typical Fiat fragility in places. Any lad or lass about my age who does a lot of driving around towns, going to pick the kids up from school, going to the supermarkets, this car is going to give them a good performance. And with a price tag of well under 14 grand, it's a bit of a bargain too. But I don't know, it's just something about Fiat. You either love the design and the looks of it, or you hate it. I'll let you decide. Personally, I'm not too keen.
Two different cars now taking two very different routes to the same destination, and that destination is to be a car that's pretty much everything to everybody. It's got to be supercar fast, it's got to have room on board for 4 adults, and I do mean room, not all screwed up in the back, and their luggage, and it's got to look good. In other words, it's got to be a super saloon, and this, the BMW M5, is the benchmark super saloon, even an ultra saloon. It is big, it is handsome, it's built by BMW so it shouldn't break, and under here there is a colossally powerful 4-litre V8 engine. It pushes out 400 brake horsepower, and it boasts more valves per cylinder and camshafts than you could shake a laptop computer at. And so, by way of complete contrast, still trying to do the same thing, from Australia, this, the Holden HRV GTS R. It's a big, flamboyant car. If you think it looks a bit like a Vauxhall Omega, that's because, well, it is a bit like a Vauxhall Omega. Quite a lot of it is based on that car. But somehow they've squeezed up front a 5.7-litre V8 engine, usually to be found at the pointy end of a Corvette. Here it's mated to a 6-speed gearbox, but that's as sophisticated as it gets, because this is all about brute force. For instance, just 2 valves per cylinder, nothing like the M5. So, before we get to grips with this, let's check out the benchmark. Oh goody, we're driving big fast cars. From the moment you fire it up, you're aware of that V8. It's not exactly raucous, it's a very refined and sophisticated version of the usual V8 burble, and it is deeply sinister, a reminder of what you're driving. Not that you need many reminders of what you're driving, it is colossally powerful, but it's the way it delivers that power that is so engaging. At lower revs and when you're just cruising and being gentle, it is creamy smooth. Start to press on, and boy, every single movement of your right foot has an immediate effect in terms of bringing the horizon closer. It's simply a machine that is designed to get from one place to another very, very quickly. And if as you're cruising along it's not going quick enough, then there is the sport mode. I press a button, thus. And I'm not rewarded with just a few subtle little changes. Oh no, it's the equivalent of pressing the button on the Batmobile that puts the wings out and the missile shields over the windows. It's unbelievable. It lowers the car and its suspension. It remaps the engine for sports performance. It even weights up the steering so it feels more like a supercar to drive. It's an astounding piece of kit. Now, it might be vulgar to talk about figures in such refined company, but blimey, have a look at these. 0 to 60 in the M5 comes up in 4.7 seconds, and it goes steaming on to 100 miles an hour in 10.6. All of which would be brilliant if it weren't for just one thing. It's as though BMW tantalisingly give you a glimpse of all this performance and then say, no, you cannot use it. Because the traction control is ridiculous. It's nearly as powerful as the engine. And I don't mean that it's just a bit of a pain, you can't go as quick as you want to go. What I mean is, if you're pulling out from a junction in a bit of a hurry, and perhaps there's a lorry coming the other way, if the BMW M5 decides, nope, you're using too much power, chum, that's it. It cuts the lot. It leaves you dead in the water. It's a nanny state. This sounds much more like the kind of V8 we might be used to. It is an enormous noise, and you can't help but blipping with the right foot at every available opportunity. But despite the noise and the extra capacity, 5.7 litres over the M5's 4 litres, it ain't as quick. No sirree. Not by a massive amount. 0 to 60 is in what? 4.9 seconds. 0 to 100 dash is in 12 and a bit seconds, so it's only a second or two here and there. But on paper it makes a difference. As a drive, you do notice that it just doesn't feel as quick. Mind you, whereas the M5 almost hides its power, and particularly with that rather overbearing traction control takes it away from you, the Holden glories in it. The traction control, what there is located behind this little flap where incredibly you can turn it up or down depending upon just how leery you feel. Occasionally its rather less than salubrious roots do shine through, such as the interior. I think it's Le Boudoir de Tarte is the style adopted, rather nasty bits of plastic that don't always fit together particularly well. The steering though is great, it feels just weighted up enough, and the driving position not too bad. because I've said it is a little bit raucous and a bit grunty and it takes a more low-tech approach than the BMW, might lead you to think, well, it's a bit of a brute to drive. But it's not. In actual fact, the whole thing adds up to a surprisingly sophisticated car. It feels very well screwed down. There's huge amounts of grip. Both of these cars will set you back around £50,000 on the road, but start to add on the bells and whistles, and particularly in the case of the BMW, you can expect to pay the thick end of £60,000. So, both of our cars arrive at their supercar destination by their different routes. Ultimately though, if you and 3 other people need to get from one place to another by road as quickly as possible, it's the M5 that's always going to be your fastest mode of transport. The Holden though is at least a little bit more flamboyant. There's more of a sensation of speed, and that for me is what it's about. After all, to use either of these vehicles to the limit of their capabilities means you'll be breaking a lot of laws several times over. And that brings me to the final point, which is if it's illegal to use the things anyway, and if I was spending the best part of £65,000 on a car that boasted supercar performance, I'd want it to look like it could do 200 miles an hour even when it was parked. So why not leave the supercar performance to the supercars and the saloon car characteristics to the saloon cars?
Join us next week for a look at the latest sports cars from Lotus, the fantastic new Elise and the ultra-fast race car on the road, Exige.